Hello, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me. I think everything seems to be working fine. So this is the How to Pitch Your Game design presentation. My name is Błażej. I am the head of development at Board&Dice. Basically, one of the people you are going to meet if you ever pitch a game to us. Now, let me very quickly tell you. Maybe let's start with the basic question, which is what this presentation is about. And by the way, before we start, I will be very happy to answer any questions you have, including if you really want to ask a question during the presentation. That is absolutely fine. Of course, after the presentation is over, we will also have a little bit more time to ask and answer some questions. So now, coming back, what this presentation is about. This presentation is about how to prepare a prototype. It is about what to do before talking to a publisher. So you have a prototype, now you want to actually pitch it to somebody, what you should do before you start talking to a publisher, how to reach out to a publisher. This is really not something that's very difficult. However, there are a few simple rules and a few do and do nots which you can follow to make this process even easier, and what to expect from meeting a publisher. And this is what this presentation is going to cover. Now, what this presentation is not about, it's how to design a good game. That's something you'll have to figure out on your own. Okay, so let's get right into it. Firstly, let's talk about preparing your prototype. The first and very, very important thing is not to worry about art. Now, we have seen many prototypes, many different prototypes. We've seen many different games. We've seen nice-looking games, ugly games, small games, big games, all sorts of games. The most important thing is whether the game is a good game, possibly a great game, and this is what we're going to look at. So do not worry about the art. What you should worry is to make the prototype simple and clean. This is very important because what we will want from a game, what a publisher will want from a game, is to be able to play it, to be able to experience the game. And we are able to see through a lot when it comes to presentation, but filling it up with extra art will only take a lot of your time. And this is not something that's going to be very useful for us, because in the end, the art and graphic design is something that we are going to be taking care of. So like I said, what you want to focus on is to make it simple and clean so that it can be easily played. Clarity is king here. It is much more important for the game to be clear, to be easy to use for us, than for it to present something which is not going to survive to the final version. So, in a nutshell, when you are preparing your prototype, you do not need these things. You do not need to scour the internet for great art to put it into the game. But what you definitely need is something like this. These, by the way, are symbols which are freely available on the internet. You can download them and you can use them in your game prototype. They are simple, they are clean, they will be much easier on your printer whenever you make a physical prototype. And simply put, this is absolutely enough when it comes to how your game should look when you pitch it to a publisher. Now, let's stop here for a moment, because I said that when you make a physical prototype. Now, in this day and age, in this trying time of a worldwide pandemic, virtual tabletops are something that we've been using extensively. As you can see, even this convention is happening online. And because of that, one of the things you should definitely think about is creating a prototype that can be played online. And there are two tools you can use here: Tabletop Simulator, which is an app you can get on Steam, This is one which you actually need to pay for if you want to get it. There is also a free online app called Tabletopia. Now, it might be daunting to create your first online prototype. There is a lot of work that will have to go into a physical prototype, and there is some work that will have to go into your first online prototype. There are a lot of mechanisms, there are a lot of ways to deal with your prototype, and there are also a lot of things that you can implement into it, both on Tabletopia and on Tabletop Simulator, which are maybe something that you will not know if you build your first prototype. But if you decide to do this, make it simple. All we will need to do, or any other publisher you pitch the game to, is we have to be able to play it. So do not worry about complex mechanisms. It doesn't have to automatically shuffle cards or put pawns on specific places. If it is playable, then it is absolutely good enough. Ask others for help. When you're building a virtual tabletop and you already know other people who play those games, or maybe even created their own modules, when you're building your own prototype, ask other people, and it's surprisingly easy to find some help. This is what I did when I started working with those platforms, and it worked out for me. I'm far from being a master, but I'm already able to create simple prototypes after just a few hours of trying out. And finally, if you can't ask anyone, or you do not know someone who knows those, there is a tutorial for everything on the internet. Seriously, for absolutely everything. Now, let me stop here for just a moment still. The virtual tabletops are a great opportunity, both for you and for us. Because without this, and this is something that became more widespread during the time of pandemic, we were unable to meet people. We were often unable to meet even in the group we usually work in. And this is why we decided to move some of our development work and the presentations online. And this is a great tool, because if you make a physical prototype, you will have to send it. You will have to send it into a publisher. It will have to arrive. And yes, it happened that a few of the prototypes, we get a lot of prototypes. Some of them, a few of them never arrived. So they had to be sent again. In the end, this is time you will have to wait until it arrives, until we are able to read the rules, understand the prototype, and then play it. So a great thing to have to keep in mind is to build your prototype online and to make it possible for you to also show us the game. Yeah, so this is the obligatory halfway cat image. This kind of marks halfway when it comes to the, maybe not to the presentation, but to the process, because right now you are able to build a prototype, and again, simplicity, and you possibly put it on Tabletopia, or Tabletop Simulator. What are the next steps? Well, we have the first contact. We have the first contact with the publisher and how to be ready for that first contact. Let's talk about that a little bit. The first thing you need to do is do a bit of research. Now, it's absolutely okay to send your game to multiple publishers. In fact, I would say that I would encourage it. It's okay to be ready to talk to a few publishers, but what you need to firstly do is answer a few questions about yourself and your own experiences. So, how many games have you played? Now, is it impossible to make a good game if you've not played all the games in the world? It's absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible that your first idea is going to be great. But it's also really important to be kind of genre savvy. So, well, yes, I'm sorry, I just looked and I can see, I never realized before that I have to put half-time cat pictures into my talks. Well, you don't have to, but hey, it's always good to see a cute cat. Now, coming back, how many games have you played? If you create a game, it's good to know other games that might be like it. Because honestly, it happened at least a few times that somebody either came to us or came to a forum where people like us gather and said, I have this revolutionary idea. I have this great idea for a game. You've never seen anything like that. One of the things, and this is incredible, I have this D6, which doesn't go from 1 to 6, but it goes 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, and 4. And it's like, it's great that you're enthusiastic about this idea. We really like it, but you probably should know a little more about the market, a little more about the games people play right now, so that you can compare your idea to what already exists. And this is why what you may want to do is simply go to a site like Board Game Geek and take a look at two things. Take a look at the hottest games and the best games, the games that are considered best by the community, and to look at the games that are now in the hotness list. And as you can see, this hotness list is really very hot because this comes from yesterday. This is when this was taken. So take a look at what's going on in the industry right now. In a way, when you talk about your game, it's good if you can say that this game comes into is in a specific genre, that it comes into a specific genre. It's in a way good to be able to say, my game is a little bit like Brass Birmingham or Terraforming Mars, but it's also this, and this, basically A, B, and C. Now, of course, if you can come in and say, my game cannot be described as it is a little bit like Pandemic Legacy or Twilight Imperium or anything else, that's also great. But it's always very good for you to actually know what's going on, what games are played, and what is hot right now, what has been on the market, what genres already exist. All right, once you've done a little bit of research when it comes to the games that are being played, time. So is your game like anything else you know? This is exactly the question I asked a moment ago. It's time to do more research. And this time, it's time to do a little bit of research on the publisher you're going to be talking to. So is the publisher you're going to reach out to a good fit for your game? There are many publishers today, and hey, this is us. This is Board&Dice. This is our profile on Board Game Geek. This is the place where you can go to see a nice list of all of the games we published. And it's a good thing to take a close look at the publisher you're going to be contacting, because perhaps the game you're going to be pitching is not something for them. Now, if you have a very good kids game and you come to us to pitch this game, we will probably say, hey, it looks like a great kids game, but this is really not something that we do. This is not something we're good at. And truth be told, when it comes to most publishers, they will not be able to publish something that is far from their ballpark. Most of us specialize a little bit in something, and everybody probably here knows that we have our T games line. Two of them you can actually see in the picture here. So City Teotihuacan, City of Gods, and Tecano, Obelisk of the Sun. This is something we do. These are heavier Euro games. So if you have a heavier Euro game, if you designed that and you are ready to pitch a game like this, we're going to be probably a great fit for you. But if you designed a light party game that requires 4 to 8 people, well, like I said, your game may be great, but it is not really probable that we will be a good fit. There is also another little aspect about looking into the publisher you're going to pitch the game for, because if you come with a game and you say, hey, I have this game, it's a heavy strategic Euro game that I think is going to be a good fit for you, we're going to say, hey, yeah, it's probably going to be a good fit for us. Let's see it. And that tells also us that you put a little bit of time to research us to any publisher you ever go to and say this. We're going to appreciate that, to put it simple. We're going to appreciate the fact that you took a moment to look into our catalog of games. Now, another thing that you need to take a look at is, are there any rules set by the publisher? Some publishers actually have some information available on what games they want to possibly take a look at. And some of them will also say, hey, here are the list of games we're not interested in. For a long time, we said, and it's probably something that is still true, that, for example, sports-based games or chess variants are not something that we are very interested in pitching. So basically, if you send this in, it's quite possible that it will be simply very quickly rejected. But again, many publishers will have their own rules. So what you really need to do also is to check the website of the publisher and see, maybe there is a special email that you need to send your materials to. Maybe there are other things that you are required to do. It's always good to not only look into the portfolio of a publisher, but also look at their site to check if there are some specific rules you need to follow with your pitch. Now, if you're ready, it's time to reach out. How do you reach out to a publisher? Well, email is your friend, and it is quite possible that you're not using email all that much. It's possible that most of your communication, online communication, comes through Skype or WhatsApp or Zoom or Messenger. However, for us and many other publishers, the best way is to simply write an email to us and tell us about the game you're going to pitch to us. This is also something that is very useful when it comes to looking at the whole process of talking about the game, when we played it, what information we received from you. If this is scattered among different methods of communication, it may become more difficult. And again, in our case, in case of Board&Dice, we will sooner or later ask you to simply communicate with us via email when it comes to the most important things about your game, so that we can easily trace it. The next question is, do you need a sell sheet when you're contacting us? And for those of you who do not know, a sell sheet is basically a short document, 1 or 2 pages, which will tell us about your game. And the answer is, no, you do not need it. It's something that is useful, but not necessarily attached to your email. However, what you probably do need is something like the contents of a sell sheet. What I mean by that is that it is very good if you are able to quickly present the idea of your game, what it is about, and communicate the basic information. How many players, how long does it play, according to your experience. So while you do not need it as a formalized document, probably when you write an email, it's good to think about information that could fit on, let's say, an A4 page, which you could tell us all of the important basics about your game. It's also probably a good idea to send us the rules, if you have them, to attach them to your email. Now, what else do you need? Like I said, you will need most probably the rules if you have a video explaining the game, a short video explaining the game, and you can send the link to it. That's also great. But basically, these are the things you need. You need to send us an email, tell us shortly about your game, attach the rules if you have them, and maybe a short video if you have one. And basically, of course, once again, if you do have it, it's going to be a great boon if you have a Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator module for the game. In the end, one more thing that you will need is also patience. You'll need that because, to be honest, we get a lot of submissions, and it takes us time to take a look at them and to decide if we want to pursue them. So it usually takes us at least a week to decide if we want to actually take a closer look at your game. And then it will still take some time before we are able to play it. Of course, again, if you can present your game to us, then it's great. And that's something that's going to make this process go much faster. But again, even with that, you have to be aware of the fact that you will need a bit of patience when it comes to us, any other publisher, making the decision whether we want to continue with the game, to pick it up. Now, here's a very important rule. I call it Rule 0, other publishers. As I said, it is okay to pitch your game to multiple publishers. In fact, this is encouraged. You created a list of publishers which you believe are perfect or good fits for your game. That's great. Pitch it to all of us at the same time. But, and this is very, very important, tell us if this is the case. Because many publishers, most publishers, make plans, and in the process, we want to know if this game is actually available, is simply available after we say yes, or do we have to wait for some time until other publishers make decisions so that you can make a choice? Again, it's absolutely okay if you pitch your game to multiple publishers, but be open about it. Be frank and simply tell us that this is the case. Hey guys, there are a few other publishers looking into it, and until that day, I will have answers from others, and I will contact you the moment somebody picks it up. And this is something we're going to usually say and ask, hey, so if you're talking to other publishers, if the game at any point is picked up, just please tell us so that we don't take more time to decide on your game when it is no longer available. Now, let's talk about the pitch itself. As I said, probably the best idea is to prepare that you're going to actually show us the game. You're the person who knows your game best. While this is maybe not something that is a great boon when it comes to writing a rule book, which we will have to read and then try to play your game, it's a great boon for you to just show up online with a module of your game and talk to us about your game and show the game to us. So, when this happens, assume that you will have about 90 to 120 minutes, so somewhere around 2 hours. This is usually the time most people will take to find out about the game. In this time, you will have to tell us a lot of things, so it's probably a great idea to practice your pitch. And another very important thing is to let us play the game. So an ideal pitch here is talking shortly about the game itself, maybe talking a little bit about the theme you've chosen for the game, show us the components, what's in the game, and start telling us how the game plays. And in the end, make sure that you let us play the game. We have seen some presentations from some authors who didn't really want us to play the game. They wanted to simply show us a move after move what happens. This is not something that's going to work. We want to be able to play a game. We do not need to finish the game, and we are fully aware that often 2 hours will not be enough to explain the game and play it, because playing in a virtual tabletop is basically like playing a game, as somebody wise once told me, just using 2 fingers. So yes, we are fully aware that this may take more time, or that we won't be able to finish, but this is not our first rodeo. We will be able to find out a lot about the game by just playing it. So make sure that we actually can play it. And finally, be ready to answer questions. We will ask you about many different things during the game, after we finish. And again, if we decide to cut it short, it does not mean anything. It just means that we already know enough about the game to discuss it. And this is the moment when we will ask you some questions. So let's talk about our questions. These are the things you might want to think about before your pitch. These are the things which we and many other publishers will ask you. So the first one is, how extensively have you tested the game? Now, this is one of the things that sometimes we will be able to see. And this is something, again, be frank and open about it and tell us how much time went into testing the game. A game that is well tested, we can often see it at first glance that some of the things were played multiple times. Still, We want to know how much work you put into the game already. And it's really okay if you tell us, I played this game 15 to 20 times with my friends or the friends of my friends. Basically, again, this is something that you should be able to tell us. The next thing we're going to ask, are you okay with changing the theme of the game? Ladies and gentlemen, this is very important. Games often change themes. Obviously, if you create a game that is very closely knit with its theme, chances are that we will not be changing it. If you created a game that has some very thematic mechanisms, and by thematic mechanisms, I mean that you created a very interesting abstraction of something that exists within your theme, yes, chances are that we will not be changing it. But on the other hand, we will often look into other themes that either fall in line with what we usually do theme-wise, or into something completely new, something that will make the game stand out. Can you hold the game for us? This is a question that we may ask as well, and this simply means, hey, if it's okay, we would like to have the option to think about the game for, let's say, 14 or 21 days, and during this time, please give us the right to simply say, okay, we're going to pick it up. This is not in any way a strange question. It often means that we are seriously considering the game and just want to know if you can stop showing it to other publishers, basically take it off the market. And the final question is, are you okay with our timeline? And this is something I'm going to be talking a little more about, but often we will tell you where potentially a game when it could be published. Now, this is something that's going to usually take time. So we will often tell you, hey, this game can be published at the earliest in 2023. Are you okay with that? Or 2024? And again, please be frank about this. If it's okay for you to wait that long or to wait that period of time, please tell us. If it's not, it's also okay. I mean, this is not something that this may be a deciding factor, obviously, but this is something that we need to communicate to you, and you need to be aware of this as well. Now, your questions, a very important thing. Ask about everything you want to know. There are no silly questions here, especially if this is your first time. Ask about anything and everything. Even if we end up not picking up your game, we will be happy to answer your questions. How things work, how long you will have to wait for things to move, what will be the extent of work we will be doing on your game, how much is going to change. All of this, all of those questions, anything that comes to your mind, make sure to ask us those questions and we will be happy to answer. Finally, what comes next? We will need time to make a decision. This is something that you have to be aware of. Those decisions are not made very quickly, as there are multiple factors that come into publishing a game. It is the game itself, what we think about it, how we like it, but also how it fits into our portfolio, where we can put it, how we can market it, how we can possibly theme it. These are a lot of questions, and some of them we want to have at least partially answered before we decide to pull the trigger and pick up a game. So you always have to be aware that whichever publisher you go to, you will have to wait sometimes a few weeks and sometimes even more for the final decision if the game is picked up or not. During that time, it's a great idea to stay open to all sorts of questions. We may want to know a little more about a specific aspect of your game, both mechanically and maybe what you think about certain changes. And finally, be patient. Very, very, very patient. Publishing a game is a process that takes time. And from a good pitch to a game that you hold in your hand and is published, it can take a lot of time. But it's something that is very satisfactory. And it is not something that is incredibly difficult. It's simply a matter of creating a good game, a great game, and following a few easy steps. And if you have the time, if you have the patience, and if you have a great game, this is where your game can end up. Your game by you. Thank you very much. This is the final cat image, which I'm going to leave here. And if you have any further questions, I will be more than happy to answer them. Right, let me take a quick look into the chat. The most important thing a designer needs to communicate in any game pitch is what makes the game unique. Yes, this is something that we're going to be interested in, of course. This is something that we would like to know, but also in the end, you need to be able to communicate what your game is, and you need to allow us to play the game, to see the uniqueness, to see everything that your game is. But of course, excellent presentation, extremely clear. Thank you very much. Are there any particular types of games you are looking for? Any genres you are looking to expand into the future? Well, obviously, something that we are always on the lookout for are games that fall in line with what we publish today, because this is what you know us for. You know us for the heavier Euro games. Obviously, we've been expanding a little bit because you also know that we have something that is in a way very far, but also in a way also close to what we do, and this is the Escape Tales line. These are basically story-based narrative escape rooms in a box. So this is something that we have as another line, and we are looking into games that are slightly lighter. For example, Zapotec, which you are able to play, by the way, throughout most of this convention. So we are looking into lighter games. We will be publishing Mandala Stones, which is again an abstract strategy game, something we wouldn't have expected us to be publishing in the future, but it happened. If you think you have a game that is interesting and that is unique and that may be something really new, definitely pitch this game to us. I think that the best answer here is what we will most certainly not be expanding towards. So we won't be making party games. We won't be making party games any time in the future. We will not be going into games that require, for example, at least 3 players or more. Our fans know us as a company that creates games for 2 players, and now pretty much all of our games have a single player mode. So if your game only works with a high player count, it's not for us. I also don't think we're going to ever go into games that are mostly random. But if you have a game, again, that is different from what we publish, but it is still a strategy game, definitely come to us, because, hey, if it's lighter than what we usually do, if it's themed very differently from what we usually do, we can still go for it. Probably not a good idea to come to us with a drinking game, a variant of Monopoly, for example, or something that is basically a reskinned Talisman. This is not something we do. Everything else, which is a game that requires a bit of deep thought, we might pick it up if it is cool. Is it okay to show you a demo with images that do not belong to the designer? For example, if you are designing a game about a medieval age, can we use Game of Thrones images as placeholders? Yes, you absolutely can. There is no problem about this. But again, the reason I told you to use simple artwork and simple symbols is because in the end, if you're spending time looking for those images through Google, through Instagram boards, for example, through mood boards and so on, this is time you're spending just so that those images exist. And I fully understand that. For example, if you're testing the game with your friends, you want them to be able to look at your prototype as something that is more finished, and definitely more polished artwork helps that. But on the other hand, it is time you're going to be sinking into creating the prototype, which in the end, we as publishers, we will not look at this art. If it comes from Game of Thrones, if it comes from Lord of the Rings, if it comes from Star Wars, it doesn't matter to us in the end. I mean, there is no problem for you to use it, but on the other hand, it's not going to add anything to the prototype on our side. Again, if you think that this is something that this helps you test the game with your friends, with people at conventions, go for it. Nobody is going to hold this against you. But if you do not need to spend the extra time looking for specific images, don't spend the extra time. Just make a prototype that is clean and clear, easy for us to use, perhaps even easy for people to reproduce. Because the symbols I showed you, if you put them on the cards instead of art, yes, the prototype doesn't look as awesome as it might with some Game of Thrones art, but it's also much easier on the printer. So perhaps there is somebody who will want to play your game but is halfway across the country, and you just send them a file that is easy on the printer, something that is easy for them to create and play the game and give you feedback. Um, if a if a designer has more than one possible game that fits with a publisher, should one leave some time between pitches? If you want to show us more than one game, absolutely go for it. I mean, you don't have to leave time before pitches. Just show us what you have. Oftentimes, we get some people who are already established designers or designers with, let's say, one design published. They come to us with, for example, 3 or 4 games. They say, "Hey, I have these 4 games. These first 3 might be a good fit. I'm adding the 4th one just for you to take a look at. Here is a document with a short description of each of this game, and here are the rules for all of those games. Pick and choose." That's also fine. That's absolutely okay. We're going to look into all of them and decide which ones we want to take a closer look at. It doesn't happen very often that from such offers we want to look at more than, let's say, 1 or 2 games. But even with that, we'll be happy to look at them. It's absolutely okay to come with more games at the same time. Do you have a list of preferred themes? That's a good question. I mean, you definitely know that we like the Mesoamerican themes. So, but we also have a game set in Egypt. So probably not, there isn't a list of themes that we favor, but there are, of course, some themes that we will not be very happy about. To put it, let me put it delicately. I mean, we are not going to ever look into a game that comes with an offensive theme. However funny it might be or edgy, this is something definitely not for us. We don't want that. We do like historical themes, though. We do. I think that's something that is going to be more interesting for us as a game that is somehow based in a time and place. And if you take something from that theme and put it into a game, the way something worked specifically, the way a city was laid out, the way trade was conducted in a specific place or time, that's going to be a boom. So I think what we will be happy to see is a historical theme or a theme that is very, very new. If you can come to us and say, "Hey, I have this theme and nobody really did this," this is also something that we might be more interested in, something that I could say that we would slightly prefer. So like I said, I don't think we have like a list of our top 10 themes, but definitely if your theme is tied to the mechanisms of the game in some interesting way, that's something that we will be more interested in. Okay, do we have any more questions, or did I answer everything? Let me very quickly check. More than one possible game that fits, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I missed one question. Is it advantageous to pitch a theme that specifically fits in with B&D line of Euros, historical Mesoamerican, rather than say science fiction? Yes, I think I kind of answered this with my last question, but yes, I think it can be advantageous. I mean, if you are, it's always important to us as a publisher. It's always important to see that you've done something that is specifically for us. I mean, it means again that you've done your homework about the publisher, and that's great because it means that you also know more about us. And if this is the case, we will always be probably, I mean, we will be more interested in a game that is um, that is historical, that is Mesoamerican. And when it comes to science fiction, indeed, this is something that we're not doing at the time, but hey, this may change as well. Again, if you look into this, this is something that this will be definitely a sort of a boon. Is it advantageous to think about how a game might be as a product beforehand? A cool component, Tekenu's obelisk. Yes, but there is a certain trap there because, as it turns out, and this is something I will tell you from my own experience. I have been working with board games. Um, I have been working with board games for about 10 years now. I mean, this is it. 2011 was about the time when I started getting into the business of, let's say, working around board games, not only playing them. And at the time, I remember, and for some time still, I thought that certain things would be interesting as a component and probably not very difficult or expensive to make. As I gained experience and I learned a little bit about the production of games, it turned out that sometimes this is not the case. So, basing your game on a very specific gimmicky component, while it may create an interesting game, it may also be a problematic factor in creating the game. If you need something very, very specific, something that does not exist in board games, it may be a huge boon in the end, but uh, but also this might create a bit of a problem. Obviously, if you create something like the obelisk from Tekenu, this is not going to be a problem. But if you create something that is a very, very involved component, it may turn out to be too difficult to produce for anyone who's making board games. So it might be a bit of a double-edged sword. I wouldn't be afraid of it. Definitely design boldly and look into new things. Let us worry about the details, with the small caveat that if you want to put like a little working mechanical device that does a lot of things that seems cheap to and easy to make but isn't, that might be a bit problematic in the end. Right, you publish a number of Euro games per year and have a schedule, but what if you find a gem, a Euro that you love, but your schedule is full till 2025? Okay, I can see the question is already on the screen. On the screen. Mm. So we do have a schedule. That is true, and the first thing we're going to do is, this is why I said in the presentation that that this is something you need to be prepared for, that we are going to ask you if you are okay with our deadlines, because it may happen that indeed we like your game, we think it's great, but we have a plan that reaches out until 2024 or 2025. And let's say the first slot we have open is, I don't know, Q4 of 2024. Now, there are a couple of factors that come into this. So I think that one of the things you want to know is, would we slide a game earlier if it was great and we really wanted to publish it? To this question, the answer is yes, possibly. That might be the case. If you come with the game and it is brilliant, it's incredible, it fits with something what we're doing now, it has a great theme, it's basically nearly finished, then yes, we might move some things around. But there is another side to this story. Um, The other side to this story is that games require time. They require time to develop. They require time to test. There are many steps a game has to go through before it becomes a published game, a published product from your prototype. And some of those things, while they can be shortened, they really, really shouldn't. So it is not something that's going to happen often, that we're going to just pick up a game and publish it this year, moving everything aside because it's that good. Even if it's that good, we usually want to make sure that it's great when we publish it, that everybody likes it, that everybody can play it. Let me take a look at the rest of this question. What's the safe break between publishing two new games? Interestingly enough, this is something that is much more that is probably a much better question for also for marketing than dev, because we can work on a couple of projects at the same time. It takes time, but in the end, it is not us who are a factor when it comes to this. There is production of a game, there are production runs of games, and a couple of other moving parts that come into this. And are there changes right now that normal conventions are not happening? This is something that there are some changes, definitely. There are some changes to how we present games, but we didn't move many things around. We still want to keep to our schedule because that is that keeps us in a way in order, and that allows us to publish the game we publish. And obviously, in a way, sometimes it's much easier to present games right now because everybody can just join and see them from their own home. So when it comes to the big picture, the changes were surprisingly small. Now, another question here: how long can it take within the pitch and the publishing of the game? That really depends. It depends on how complex the game is. It depends on how much work needs to be done, because again, it depends. If you are a game designer, a lot depends on your experience and how and what you do with your game before you pitch it. So there are some designers who already have regular testers groups and they come with a game that is very polished. Still might require work, but already is more polished than, for example, someone who is designing their first or second game and has a good game, but still a game that requires work. Generally, you have to be prepared to, from the first pitch until the game is published, at least with us, you have to be prepared that it's going to be probably something between 2 and 3 to 3.5 years. This is how much time you will have to, let's say, wait from the moment you pitch the game to the moment the game is published. Right, let me see if I didn't miss anything. If you have any extra questions to what I said, if I didn't quite answer what you asked, please be sure to tell me. And again, are there any other questions? And let me again take a quick look into the list. I mean, it's something that you have to be absolutely aware of, is that it will always take time. It will take effort. It will also take some, not only patience from you, but you also have to be aware that your game can change, and in a way it can also change rather significantly. It's still going to be your game, but we are going to make some changes to it. And let's see, we have another question. Which game have you developed that, in your opinion, has seen the most changes from pitch to finished project? Well, this is a difficult question, because many games change sometimes. Okay, so sometimes a small change can make a significant difference in how a game plays and how it feels. I honestly couldn't tell you which game needed the most work right now, but This is a surprisingly difficult question. I mean, I think that one of the games that went through a lot of changes was a game that is not yet available, and that is Dark Ages. It went through many changes and iterations, but also one of the reasons a lot changed is that we added many modules to the game. So while the core gameplay at one point remained sort of immutable, we created different versions and options for the game. So in a way, the game that we started with and the game we ended up, plus some modules, is quite a different, are two quite different games. Again, the core gameplay is still there, but we added a lot of options. Um, what's your favorite board gaming moment? Also, which game was most exciting for you to publish and why? My favorite board gaming moment is obviously the aha moment, the moment where we start, where there is this exploration of the game and some things fall into place, and you say, "This is the thing. This is what the game is about, and now I'm going to try to play it." Like my favorite moment is basically discovering something that is very cool about the game and making use of it. And which game was most exciting for you to publish and why? This is also a very difficult question. I do get excited about most of our games. I think right now, I think from the games most recently, I think it was. I couldn't decide if it was Tekken or Tawantinsuyo. They were. I was both very excited. I was very excited for both of them. Um, so, and both of them, I mean, for me, the moment when they were published was very exciting because the when we worked on the prototypes of these games, they were so very different from the final games. And again, the developers' work also comes in a way at the stage of creating art, because while this is something that is the domain of our incredible art department, we also help still a little bit in the to to assess the readability of the game, whether the ideas are properly conveyed. So we help out with this a little bit, and it was immensely exciting for both of these games for me to look at them become the games that were published. And I was really excited opening the first copies, the boxes of those games. Um, Often, if a game would change too much in order to be good, then it might be also rejected. Yes, that sometimes happens. Um, it sometimes happens that if it turns out that we pretty much created a new game, then we need to face the bitter reality of having to reject it even rather late in the process of working on the game, because in the end, it is not the game that we picked up. So yes, this uh, this definitely happens. So thank you for reminding me of this. Okay, I think we're slowly running out of time. If there is like maybe one more question right now, I can answer it, and otherwise, I will have to be finishing up for today. Already, I will say this has been very enjoyable to me. Thank you for all the questions, they were excellent. And again, if you ever want to reach out, pitch a game, or if you even want to ask questions, you can find me easily among the Board&Dice team. So if you have any other questions, you can definitely ask them. You can ask them on our Discord. And like I said, this was very enjoyable to me. Thank you very much for all of your questions. And yes, I think this is it. So again, thank you very much. I think this will be everything from me. Again, if you want to find me, I'm quite easy to find both on Facebook and through our Board&Dice channels. So again, thank you very much. I wish you all good luck, great luck with your designs, and I'm hoping that I will get to see them and that I will get to be one of the people who say, yes, let's pick up this wonderful game. So thank you all very much.